Good morning and welcome to BBOC Live, presented by BetMGM. It's 10:30 a.m. here on the East Coast, which means it's time to cut it up and talk college hoops. I'm joined by my fellow co-hosts, Greg Waddell and Mike Randall. We're going to be giving out our best bets in Underdog Parlay, and we'll be hitting all the marquee games of the day, including UConn Marquette, which is just the third top 5 matchup in the Big East in the past 11 years. A reminder to our audience, everything we talk about, our picks, the data, the analysis, all available in the award-winning Action Network app. Before we get into our best bets, don't miss out on this offer from our sponsor. BBOC is presented by BetMGM. Use bonus code ACTION when signing up to get $150 in bonus bets when you bet $5. For new users in Arizona, Colorado, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, and Wyoming. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 or older. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, guys, we're here on a loaded Saturday slate. I'm going to get it kick-started with our best bets segments. And what better way to do it than to take a team that just got drilled by 40 points. I'm hoping for some recency bias. It's holding on in the market at about 6.5. I'd play it up to 7.5. South Carolina laying the points at home. As I mentioned, they're coming off that embarrassment in the jungle, losing to Auburn on the Plains by 40. But everyone loses at Auburn. They're one of the best home court teams in the entire country. I think that suppressed the spread a little bit. And critically, since 2019, Lamont Paris, South Carolina's head coach, is 28-18-2. That's a 61% clear rate against the spread following a loss. And then the game within the game, the Tigers are basically in free fall at this point. They've lost 6 of 7 straight up. Their at-large hopes, aspirations, poof, they're gone. They're just looking ahead to Nashville. They got to win the SEC tournament. Probably have to win 5 in 5 days to get an automatic bid to make it to March Madness. I think they're in trouble. I think their head coach is in trouble. And then on the floor, they're just not very good in terms of protecting the basketball. They turn it over 13 times per game. That's 282nd in the nation. They're awful on the glass, and I think that plays into the strength of this South Carolina team. So I'm going to go with the Gamecocks, lay the points here in a bounce-back spot. I'll kick it to you first, Mike. What do you think about that play? I know you are bullish on Lamont Paris. He's done a really nice job with the Gamecocks this season since coming over from Chattanooga, and it's really one of the biggest surprises in major basketball this season.
Yeah, we talked about it on the pod on Thursday. We have a future on them on South Carolina. They are extremely dangerous, very unselfish, share the ball. Coming off the loss to Auburn, they were able to crush and cover against Vanderbilt. The Mississippi game they had in hand, they have played fairly well over the last few games. So they should be able to get this. There's no look-ahead spot. It's Mississippi, Texas A&M, Florida. Okay, they got Tennessee at home coming on Wednesday, March 6th. I like the pick. South Carolina plays at that slow pace. It's almost very reminiscent of Virginia when they were really good. So you always get nervous with this number. I just think they're going to take care of business at home. I like it.
All right, where are you going here? I see you got a Big Ten game circled.
Folks, if Wisconsin is as good as I think they are, you're going to get this game. You're not losing on the road at Iowa to Fran McCaffrey. The number is just 1. Yes, Wisconsin lost 4 straight games. I don't want to hear about it. There's a chance in the bracket preview show that's coming out on CBS that they are still a top 16 seed. They lost to Purdue, no shame in that. Nebraska up by about 1,000, and then they gagged coming all the way back. So it's not like they were dominated guys in those games. Wisconsin is the better team. They are solid metrically. They have AJ Storr. Now they have the perimeter player who can attack the basket. If Wisconsin is good as I think they are, and they're going to go on a run here and finish 23-8 because the Purdue game away is not going to matter for Purdue on Sunday, March 10th, I think they get this game. They shoot free throws well. They're great on the defensive boards. They don't turn over. Hey, Max Klesman, how about a couple threes here? Get the job done. I don't care what it is. I don't care if you're down 5 with 3 minutes left. Get the win, get the cover, and move on. If the Badgers are what I think they are, guys, they get this win, and I believe they are. I'm taking them on the road at Iowa.
All right, Greg, let's get you involved here. A little isolation. Go to the hoop. I know you're way outside of your comfort zone talking about teams that you never pick. Just kidding. Michigan State, who you got?
Yeah, look, I have to touch on Wisconsin quickly with Randall because I'm contractually obligated to speak on any Big Ten team that's mentioned on the show. I would go so far as to even stretch it to this, Randall. I agree completely. This is like a if you are who I think you are, just win the game. I feel like I was in the locker room and Greg Gard was just spitting some facts. All I would add is that they don't even need to be for real to win this game. They just need to be like adequate. Like I really am selling hard on this Iowa team. And one thing I love doing, especially when it's the second matchup between conference opponents, go back and look at what happened in the first game. Wisconsin won by 11 points at the Kohl Center. Comfortable win. on a game where they shot just 4 for 16 from three. Iowa shot 41% from three in that game. It still couldn't cut it to single digits. I love the spot, Randall. I'm with you on the Badgers. I'm also taking a road favorite in the Big Ten. That scares me a little bit, but it shouldn't, because Michigan State is a good basketball team, and Michigan is one of the worst basketball teams I have ever seen over an entire 30-game season in this conference. Guys, they've lost 17 games on the year. They are 0-17 against the spread in those losses. They have not covered the spread once in a game that they've lost. These spreads have been huge. I feel like I've just been saying that sentence over and over again on the show. And if you've been tailing it, you've been cashing your ticket on a week-by-week basis. Last week got even worse for Michigan. They lost by 20 to Nebraska. They were down 30, 15 minutes in that game. And then they lost by 29 to Illinois. They were down 37 with 10 minutes left in that game. The only thing that's even keeping these margins semi-respectable is people having mercy against the Wolverines. Tom Izzo notably does not have mercy for anyone in maize and blue. This is his final chance, potentially, to face Juwan Howard. If he loses this game, somehow, some way, Juwan Howard stumbled his way to a 500 record in his career against Tom Izzo. That's not going to happen. Michigan State's been shooting the lights out. I think that continues against the porous Michigan defense. I'd be shocked if they don't win by double digits.
We've got to ask Stuckey, guys, because I think he's got Michigan in the Action app, if this will count for the $500 game. We got to ask him that.
Ooh, yes. I hope it does. I hope it does. Hey, some are saying, is that why Stuck's not on the show today? Is he done a little bit?
From the Big Ten to the Big East for our marquee matchup, number 1, number 4 Marquette against the nation's top team in UConn, playing in Hartford, not Stores. That's a critical element. I'll ask the gentlemen here on the panel their thoughts on that, but I'll get it started with the total. I like over. I like it over all the way up to 150. And it's pretty simple in terms of the game plan here. We know that Shaka Smart is one of the best road dogs in all of college basketball. He's 11-4-1 against the closing number as a road dog at Marquette with 8 outright upsets. So to me, that indicates that at the very least, this is going to be a competitive game. We can get some fouls down the stretch. But in terms of how he can beat UConn, he's got to play even faster than they're comfortable playing. And Marquette's a team that already plays with incredible tempo. They're 19th in fast break points per game. They have the 7th shortest average possession length in the country. And that's not just transition. That's that secondary break. You see Kolek continue to keep his foot on the accelerator, diving into the lane, kicking it out, facilitating for his teammates, and also creating scoring opportunities himself. And you have to do that against UConn, because when they settle in to their half-court defense, they are elite. They are 6th nationally in 2-point shooting percentage from the floor. And once they are there and they can mark up your players, there's really no way to break them. And you've seen that in the past month. They've held teams far below their scoring average. So I think Marquette's going to play fast. And what's interesting is UConn is the 2nd slowest team in the Big East in terms of tempo, but they have the offensive weapons. If they are sped up, I don't think they're going to be uncomfortable playing at an elevated tempo on their home floor. I think this game is going to cruise past the number of 148. And as I mentioned, I'd play it up to 150. Let me kick it to Randall first on this one. Any thoughts in terms of Hartford being the location and not Stores, it being a bit of a discounted home court advantage, or did that not take, a part of your handicap at all in this spot?
It did a little bit, Mike, which is why I'm going to the under here, going against you. These are two very close teams. It's a close battle. Tyler Kolek is playing at such a level that he is the maestro. He is controlling the tempo. Sure, the Marquette doesn't have the depth because of some injuries, so that does normally create a high-scoring environment, but you touched on it. As much as UConn is great on offense, they are also really tough on defense here. So I think the game is very close. I'm going with the old school way of marrying the underdog with the under. I like Marquette in this matchup as well. I hear everything you're saying, and of course, we're worried about late game fouling, can always be an issue, but I think that Marquette is going to play tough. I think they're not going to want to run up and down the court with UConn. Yes, it's at Hartford. I get a little bit of a discount there, so I'm leaning slightly to the under actually in this matchup, because I think it's going to be two close teams. Like Greg said, not the second time they're playing, but I think it's a really close matchup. Greg,
are you going to break the tie on this total, or do you like a side in this one?
If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I can't get over the Shaka numbers that you threw at us. 11-4-1 against the spread this season. 4-0-1 against the spread as an underdog. Guys, this is too many points. That's the way I read this. I think these two teams are a lot closer to similar in caliber than they are having a huge gap between UConn and Marquette. And that's no disrespect to UConn, who I do have as 1B to produce 1A atop this sport. But I think the reality of it is this Big East conference outside of these two teams is not as strong as we all hoped it would be. I think there's serious questions with Creighton, and you get a lot of opportunities if you are UConn or if you are Marquette to beat up on teams like Xavier and Villanova. And they've been doing that. This is the longest win streak in the nation for UConn, 13, but Marquette's got an 8-game winning streak of their own. I think they're a big game team, guys. I can't go beyond what I saw in the Maui Invitational, which was, Marquette in a one-possession game with Purdue with a minute left in that game. I expect that to be the game script in this one. I think this is going to be a heavyweight slugfest. Marquette 2-1 against UConn last year. Let's not forget, at the end of the year, at the end of March, it became, well, UConn was always this dominant team. No, Marquette was the Big East regular season champs. Marquette was the Big East tournament champs because they beat them 2 of 3. All of the guys that were on Marquette's team are back except for Omax. These guys are not going to be afraid of this game. It's a desperate spot because they are 2 games back in the loss column. If they want their season to mean anything down the stretch, they have to win this game, not just cover. And the elephant in the room, Tristan Newton's just 26% from three-point range in conference play. He's been struggling with that wrist. Tyler Kolek's been the best guard in the country. I think Kolek can win that matchup, and Marquette can cover this game.
I teased it at the top. We're going to give out a Moneyline Underdog parlay, all 3 of us bringing one to the table. I'll get it started with an ambitious one. McNeese has been one of the best mid-majors, talk of the town. They got some impactful wins. They beat Michigan, which I don't think Greg is all that impressed by. It's interesting, though, in the Southland, they've lost focus at times. They almost lost to Texas A&M Corpus Christi. They fall to Southeast Louisiana. I think going on the road in-state against Nichols, that this number is way inflated. McNeese certainly should be a favorite, but I think right now they're about 10.5, 11 points, which gives me Nichols plus 450 on the money line. I'll go ahead and take that all day because they have the scoring balance to keep pace in this game. They have 4 starters that average over 12 points per game, and they essentially in terms of the way that they play, they're going to play slower, but McNeese likes to pack it in defensively and say, beat us from long range. Nichols has the shooters to do it. They have 3 starters who shoot over 34% from long range, including the best player in this game from a front court perspective, Deontay Smith. He can step out and make 3-pointers. He's averaging over 15 points per game, 6 rebounds, shoots 39% from 3-point range. So if he plays really well and scores in the 20s, I think this is going to be a game at the under 4-minute timeout. And at plus 450, way too much value. I'll go ahead and take the Colonels to throw an upset into the Cowboys. All right, Randall, what do you got here?
Wake Forest. You need a quad 1 win. You are 0-4 against quad 1. You're 5-4 against quad 2. Congratulations. You're king of the little people. 11-0 against quad 3 and quad 4. 2 of the last 3 times they have played Virginia, they have beaten them. That includes at Virginia when they were a 3.5-point underdog. Steve Forbes needs this game badly. They are 37th in the net. They are 0-4, like I said, against quad 1. You know they can shoot the 3 well, which is the magic elixir against Virginia. And enough with Ryan Dunn and Reese Beekman. They are very solid college players, but the offense leaves a lot to be desired. Forbes is a great tactician. They need this game on the road. And I understand the compelling argument that Virginia, coming off the loss to Pittsburgh, is going to bounce back. And I understand that they lost at Wake Forest 66-47 on January 13th. But I think Forbes is the elixir to Tony Bennett. They don't have the offense to compete. Monsanto's going to make some threes, which he didn't do against Duke. And by the way, could you grab the rebound there to cover the 8.5 for me there, Damari, against Duke when no one realized it was a 1-and-1 with 5 seconds left? We can get into that some other time. I think Wake Forest guys with their shooting, I think in a desperation spot to get a quad 1 win, it's 3.5. I think they win it outright. I am not buying Virginia. This is not a vintage Virginia team. They'd have to have a fantastic defensive game because Wake is going to be able to score. I'll take the Demon Deacons at Virginia.
All right, for Greg's pick, you're going from a marquee matchup between Marquette and UConn to another in the Big East.
Yeah, I'm sticking in that conference, and I'm going to go with Butler at home against Creighton. Speaking of desperate teams that need a resume boost here, how about the Butler Bulldogs? 16-9, Thad Matta's team, I think, has overachieved. I don't think anybody really penciled them in as a potential NCAA tournament team on paper coming into the year. They've really got some really nice wins. If you go back through it, no teams in this conference at least have wins at Marquette and at Creighton. A couple of really good non-conference wins that have held up well as well. That Texas Tech win at Hinkle looks better and better every single week. I think this is their last chance. chance. If you look ahead through the final 3 weeks of the season, they don't play another Ken Pom top 25 team. At Villanova would be okay, but if they want that big stamp on the resume, put ours up against yours, Selection Sunday style, they got to win this one against Creighton. Now, if you remember 2 weeks ago, they did get the win at Creighton. It was an insane game. They shot 13 for 22 from 3 to do so. I don't think they need to do that again today, partially because Posh Alexander did not play in that game for Butler. He's back healthy now. A full-strength Butler Bulldogs team that have 3 guards that can all explode for 20-plus points any given game. I know they're licking their chops that Stephen Ashworth is the one who has to deal with them defensively. That's partially why Butler was so good offensively last game. Ashworth could not check one of us 3, gentlemen. I like Butler. I actually think there's a chance this team is just the better basketball team. And if they get a decisive win today, I think the metrics might reflect that sooner rather than later.
I mentioned UConn splitting their home games between Gamble and going out to Hartford. Villanova does the same in South Philly at the Wells Fargo Center. Now that like Providence has taken a step back due to the coaching change and some injuries, do you think that Hinkle is the best home court in the Big East currently?
I think it is. Yeah. I mean, that place is like a religious experience, truly. I've been there at least one game every season, the last 3, and it truly is like a destination spot. But it's louder than you expect. Like, it feels like a big high school gym, but it gets crazy if it's a 1-possession game. I think it could make the difference truly today if they can get hot from 3.
All right, we turn to marquee matchup number 2. The Jayhawks traveling to Norman to take on Oklahoma. I like under 143.5 here, and it just comes down to the historical data that I was able to pull. Dating back to 2014, Porter Moser and his teams have been a solid underplay on their home floors, cashing 60% of unders in the past decade. And since the start of the new year, both of these defenses have played really well, according to Bart Torvik's adjusted defensive efficiency metric, KU 22nd, Oklahoma 34th. And when you pair that with Oklahoma's adjusted tempo, according to KenPom 190th, I could see this game grinding down to a slow half-court battle. There's also some injuries on the Kansas side to some of their offensive playmakers. That could impact the total as well. Both teams have struggled on the offensive end recently. You look at the last 2 to 3 games on both of their resumes. I was surprised to see this number hovering in the mid 140s. I think it's going to be kind of a rock fight and played in the upper 60s. So I'll go ahead with the under here. Kick it to you, Randall. What's your play on Sooners Jayhawks?
Yeah, it's too close to call because Kansas has dominated this rivalry to me. But what you've seen with Kansas is they can't pull away from teams, especially on the road. Lost away, Texas Tech, destroyed, no McCullough, that's fine. Kansas State away, lost. Iowa State lost. West Virginia lost. Besides Oklahoma State, they even lost at UCF. So I don't think Kansas, although they usually get off to hot starts in these situations, guys, as a slight favorite on the road in conference games. I think Porter Moser's offense has been clicking. I think they're desperate. They need this battle as well. I think Kansas injuries are legit. So I'm looking to hit Oklahoma, the live line at some point. Give me Kansas jumping out to like a 10-2 start, and I'll easily grab Oklahoma because I think it's a 1-possession game either way. I'm not going to mess with Self, especially with his dominance over Oklahoma. But I think if Oklahoma gets down early or you saw Kansas make their run like they did against Kansas State in the second half to open up, I think I'm going live line there on the Sooners.
Seems like top 10 teams as short favorites on the road. That's where they've gone to die this year, at least in terms of going to the window. Do you agree, Greg?
I do, especially with Kansas, 1-5 in Big 12 road games this season. And fellas, I've mentioned it before on this show. This is sort of the Hunter Dickinson story. I chuckle every time I think about the fact that he left one team that had a bunch of really talented players at the top with no depth and no shooting to go play for another one just because Bill Self dropped him a bag full of cash. Look, Kansas is a good basketball team. They're certainly not a great basketball team, and that's when they're at full strength. They're not at full strength. DeJuan Harris was playing through his injury. In the last couple of games, McCullough missed 2 straight. I believe McCullough is going to return. That's per Jeff Goodman. They expect him to play today. He's not going to be 100% even if he does. Oklahoma has been very good at home, 13-2 on the year. The 2 that I care about are 2 wins they had against KenPom top 20 teams at home. When they've played the very best teams in the country, they have won those games. I do want to ask you guys this, though, to play devil's advocate with myself for a second. The only thing that scares me about Oklahoma getting points at home here is the simple fact that any coach who is strongly rumored to maybe keep an eye on that job that just came open in Columbus, Ohio this week has gotten blown out in their first game since that news that Chris Holtmann got fired dropped. I'm talking Lamont Paris, South Carolina, 40-point L. I'm talking Eric Musselman, Arkansas, Sean Miller, Xavier, 30-point losses. Porter Moser wants to leave Oklahoma. I don't think I'm breaking any news on that. He's been rumored maybe trying to angle back to the DePaul job. Calabrese, does that scare you at all?
Oh, I mean, now that you're dropping conspiracy theories, I'm quaking in my boots. But once again, blowouts, no fouls at the end. So I got the under here. I like the tune that you're humming. Randall, what do you think?
I think that's fair, which is why I leaned away, Greg, from Oklahoma. I agree. I mean, I think he righted the ship. They were starting to go the wrong way. Then he got Oklahoma going. But I don't think he's long in the tooth at Oklahoma, which is why I am not taking them to start. I'd rather hit them live in this game. I don't think there's a narrative that Oklahoma jumps out early and Kansas only comes back late, which is why I said live line. It scares me a little bit. I agree.
All right, into the stretch run here with our second best bet of the show. I'm going to start it with Colorado as a short road favorite playing against USC. In my opinion, the Buffs just have way too much talent to let this slide continue. They lose against UCLA a couple days ago, but when you look at their roster, currently by NBA mock drafts, at least if you put any stock in that, they have 3 starters who are first-round picks in Williams, De Silva, and Simpson, and they can really shoot. They're top 15 in floor percentage and shooting efficiency. Eventually, that has to matter, and I think it matters against a USC team that hasn't beaten a conference opponent with a winning record in league play yet. They're clearly at this point circling the drain. This is going to be a reset in terms of the coaching staff. You're going to see players leave in the offseason. It just didn't work. Whereas Colorado, I think if they can start stacking wins down the stretch, they can build some momentum going into the Pac-12 tournament, and I think be a dangerous team come March Madness. I understand that usually you want to go ahead and fade the Buffs when they're away from Boulder. It's almost an inverse in terms of their performance against the spread, but I faded them against UCLA, so I feel covered there. I'm going to go ahead. I think they win this one comfortably against the Trojans. Randall, who you got here?
San Francisco plays at the second fastest pace in the WCC. Loyola Marymount and Stan Johnson has been a very profitable fade for me. But what I will tell you is they're very short-handed now, and you saw that against Gonzaga. When they play at home, they usually shoot well from 3, and they shoot a bunch. Against Gonzaga, they shot 33 threes from home, short bench, not a lot of depth. San Francisco wants to push the pace, and look at Loyola Marymount games at home. Either they're scoring 90 or their opponents are scoring 80. I am going over here, the 143 number. It's dropped a little bit. I don't care. I expect it to go back up as we get close. This is not a defensive rock fight. San Francisco can score and get up and down the court, and Loyola Marymount doesn't have the depth nor the defensive acumen. So give me Loyola Marymount shooting well from home and San Francisco to push the pace, and we will get over comfortably the 143 number here.
All right, we're going to bring this full circle. I talked about Auburn absolutely dog walking South Carolina this week. Greg, do you like him again here at home?
I do. I'm backing the Tigers, and you and I both know, Calabrese, Randall, you as well. We have some toxic teams on this show that we just can't seem to avoid, right? I would throw Miami out as one. Stuck and I had a couple earlier this season that we would go back and forth on. North Carolina was always trying to be a fade. We kept losing on it. Well, guess what? They need to give out chips when I go 7 days without betting on the Kentucky Wildcats. I feel like a new sobriety has lifted in my life because I've seen the light. This team is not tough at all. They don't have interest defensively. They're very talented, but talent can only go so far when you play very good basketball teams and teams that are physically superior in the front court. Auburn is dominant at home. This is the best home team in high major basketball. 13-0, every single win by double digits. Kentucky, they're fine. They're going through the motions right now, 3-4. But man, Cal keeps telling everyone who will listen, he wants to go small. His plan in the front court is to move away from Aaron Bradshaw and Onyensu and Big Z and go with a Trey Mitchell pairing with Adu Thiero. This is not the game to do that. If he's serious with those threats, I mean, Broom should just feast on the boards. Kentucky's already 233rd in the country in offensive rebound percentage allowed. Auburn's 40th in offensive rebounding themselves. We just saw them punk South Carolina, guys, who I think is a very, very tough basketball team. And if you let it snowball, if you let Auburn get a couple easy buckets, if you start to let those guys chirp and the crowd get going, all of a sudden you blink and you're down 20 points to this team. I think Kentucky's inexperience and the changes in the front court really favor another Auburn blowout.
Greg, to that point, if you're banking on Trey Mitchell, boy, you are the crane kick, karate kid desperation move. Left UMass, Texas, West Virginia, Kentucky, pick a team, any team. He is not reliable. That's not the guy to go to. I agree. But to me, that reeks of desperation and support your pick even more.
We got a little bit of bonus time here, so let's share any picks that were on the cutting room floor. Almost made the show. For me, it's a live play on UConn. I think if Marquette comes out hot, knocks down their first 2 or 3 triples of the game, and I can get UConn in that -2.5 to -4 point range in the first 5 to 7 minutes on their home floor, I'm going to go ahead with the Huskies. So that's something I have little alerts set. I'm going to sit down and watch that one at 3 o'clock. Randall, do you have anyone that almost made the cut?
Yeah, how about Florida State getting 5.5, guys? That 5.5 number when you're a home underdog, very frisky. They have the length, they have the ability to bother Duke. Let's see Filipowski handle inside here against the Florida State bigs. That 5.5 number feels very odd to me. Not a vintage Duke team, very inconsistent, has to shoot well, may not against the length of Florida State. Leonard Hamilton does well against the Dukies. How about Florida State plus 5.5?
All right, Greg, now that you're sober, you're Kentucky free, take us home with one more pick.
I'm going to go back to my Big Ten country, boys, and I have my eye on Illinois on the road at Maryland. -2.5 is the number here. 2 things to keep in mind. When Illinois lost to Maryland in a very surprising result at home in Champaign earlier this season, they did not have Terrence Shannon Jr., and the story of that game was truly missed layups. I mean, Justin Harmon off the bench, God bless his soul. I think he went about 1 for 9 in transition layup opportunities in that game. Ultimately, Maryland emerges victorious in a very ugly basketball game. I just think Illinois is significantly better. This reminds me of, Randall, your Wisconsin pick here. It's a what do you have between the years game. For an Illinois basketball team, I still believe can be really, really dangerous in March. Maryland has not held up well against the very best on their schedule at home. They're 0-2 against the Ken Pom top 40 in their own gym this year. ILL, baby. They should win this game comfortably.
A reminder, BBOC Live is presented by BetMGM. Use bonus code ACTION when signing up to get $150 in bonus bets when you bet $5. For new users in Arizona, Colorado, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, and Wyoming. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 or older. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. You can find all of our picks for today's slate, plus the rest of the Action Network staff, all of the writing, all of the analysis in the award-winning Action Network app. Have a bad beat? Please, please share it with us. Call our Bad Beat hotline at 959-BAD-BEAT. We'll see you again next Saturday at 10:30 a.m. Eastern. This has been BBOC Live, presented by BetMGM. For Mike Randall, Greg Waddell, I'm Mike Calabrese. Have a great one.